The cargo plane cut through the Nevada desert sky like a silent predator, its engines humming steadily. Inside the cockpit, Captain Hayes sat quietly, her fingers lightly tracing the edges of the control panel. She wasn't fidgeting, she wasn't anxious, yet every muscle in her body was alert, tuned to the vibrations of the aircraft. Outside, the sun glinted off the arid terrain below, casting long shadows across the jagged mountains. It was an ordinary flight on the surface, a routine mission transporting critical military equipment from a secure base to a classified location, but knew that ordinary could shatter in an instant. In the cabin behind her, passengers murmured softly among themselves. A few were military personnel, decked in fatigues, speaking in low tones about deployment schedules and mission logistics. Others were civilian contractors, their eyes darting nervously to the small windows as the plane soared above the desert expanse. None of them suspected that the calm, silent woman at the controls was no ordinary pilot. Her resume was modest on paper, a few years of cargo flights, yet her history told a story of extraordinary skill. Decorated Air Force ace, combat veteran and tactician of near-mythical reputation. She had left that world behind, or so everyone thought. A sudden crackle of static broke through the radio, sharp and urgent. Unidentified aircraft approaching high speed, coordinates Delta 37, barked a voice. Eyes flicked to the radar, scanning for the source. F-16 pilots had scrambled into the sector, attempting to intercept an unknown threat closing in rapidly. Her pulse quickened ever so slightly, though outwardly she remained calm. The radar blips danced across the screen, erratic and unpredictable. Something about the pattern set off instinctual alarms in her mind. She leaned forward, tracing the trajectory with a finger, the calculation already forming in her head. In the passenger cabin, one of the contractors nudged another. "What's happening? Are we in danger?" His voice carried just enough tension to be audible to the flight crew. Heard it, but she didn't answer. She didn't need to, her mind was already running multiple simulations at once: angles, altitude, speed, wind currents, enemy behavior. She had seen similar flight patterns before in simulation exercises and real combat scenarios, but something about this felt different. It wasn't just an unknown craft. It was intelligent, aggressive, and highly trained. The co-pilot, sensing the tension, glanced toward her. "Captain, should we?" His voice trailed off. Eyes met his, calm yet commanding. "Keep steady. We're not reacting yet. Watch the horizon and keep your hands on controls. This is going to get tricky." Her voice was soft, almost serene, but there was an unshakable authority to it. The co-pilot swallowed and nodded, his hands tightening on the yoke. He had flown with many pilots, but his composure in moments like this made the entire cockpit feel like a calm island amidst a storm. Outside, the radar indicated the approach of a second blip, moving at a speed that made conventional intercepts nearly impossible. His mind raced. F-16s maintain formation Delta 23. Adjust altitude 20 feet up. I've got a vector to lead the target. Stand by. The pilots responded immediately, their trust implicit, though they didn't yet know her identity or why her commands carried such precision. She leaned back slightly, letting her mind stretch across multiple dimensions at once. She could see the cargo bay, the fragile equipment secured inside, the nervous passengers, and the unpredictable enemy craft outside. It was a balancing act that few could manage. Mental acuity, tactical calculation, and physical execution all at once. Her training decades ago in a different life had taught her to survive, to command, to anticipate chaos before it arrived. Now that knowledge would have to be applied in a high-stakes aerial chess game, with real lives on the line. The plane's engines thrummed, vibrating through the floor and seats, adjusted the throttle, subtly shifting the aircraft's trajectory. The F-16 pilots radioed back, "Unidentified craft is accelerating. We can't hold," requesting immediate strategy. His mind had already anticipated this. "Prepare for coordinated engagement. I'll provide vectors. Backup is en route. Maintain composure. Follow my lead." In the cabin, a woman near the window gasped softly. "Did you hear that? Something coming," she whispered. A few passengers glanced nervously at each other. The crew tried to reassure them, but their own faces betrayed worry. None of them could seize calm hands, the quiet precision with which she manipulated the aircraft, nor could they sense the storm of strategy unfolding in her mind. She was a silent conductor, orchestrating a symphony of survival in 3 dimensions. The first flashes of panic appeared in the passenger cabin when the F-16s radioed another warning. Sensing rising fear, allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. Not because she was happy, it wasn't time for that, but because she thrived in this moment, in the tension and the challenge. She had faced life-and-death situations countless times before. The stakes today were no different. Only now, her audience didn't know who they were flying with, and that made her work all the more satisfying. Suddenly, in the distance, a deep rumble began to resonate through the sky. Engines, heavier and more powerful than the F-16s, roared toward them. Eyes brightened slightly. "A-10 inbound," she said softly, almost to herself. She had called them in earlier as backup, and now they would arrive just in time to support the operation. The F-16s would coordinate with her guidance, and together they would confront the unknown threat. His gaze returned to the radar. The enemy craft moved with astonishing speed, yet she could anticipate every adjustment. Her fingers tightened briefly on the yoke, then relaxed. The plane glided like a predator, ready to strike, ready to protect, ready to lead the unprepared into safety. The desert stretched beneath them, indifferent to the chaos above. For the passengers, the sky was serene, for it was a battlefield and she had already claimed it. She sat quietly, calm, almost unreadable, as the storm approached. But the moment the F-16 pilots called for help, the world would realize she was no ordinary cargo pilot. And above the Nevada desert, the sky waited for the first move. The sky above Nevada rippled with tension as the F-16 pilots struggled to keep pace with the unidentified aircraft. Their sleek machines darted and twisted like startled hawks, engines screaming in protest against impossible maneuvers. Its radar flickered with multiple blips, the rogue craft's trajectory erratic yet disturbingly precise. She traced its path with a practiced finger, calculating intercept angles faster than even the most advanced computer programs. Every movement the enemy made was anticipated, every acceleration countered before it occurred. In the cockpit, she was a conductor of chaos, orchestrating survival with a calm that unnerved even seasoned pilots. "Captain, it's changing altitude rapidly," her co-pilot muttered, tension tight in his voice. "We can't predict." He stopped mid-sentence as hand lifted, gesturing ever so slightly. "Don't predict," she said softly, almost a whisper. "Observe, adapt, and execute. Let it make the first mistake." Her eyes, ice-cold yet focused, never left the radar screen. Lines of data and flight paths streamed across it like a digital battlefield. She was already calculating the next 5 moves, each one designed to outmaneuver an enemy whose skill was apparent but not absolute. The first blip split into 2, a deceptive maneuver to confuse the F-16s. The pilots radioed back frantically, their voices overlapping with urgency and fear. Remained calm, her mind slicing through the panic like a scalpel. "Maintain altitude, heading 220, Delta 3 minutes. Vector the lead F-16 toward the left flank. Backup is on its way." She didn't need to shout. Her authority commanded immediate compliance. The pilots followed her directions, instinctively trusting the rhythm of her guidance, though none knew why she moved with such precision. Down below, the desert stretched endlessly, a canvas of muted gold and brown. The heat shimmered off the terrain, but up here at 25,000 feet, the air was crisp and thin. The cargo plane rocked slightly, buffeted by unseen currents, yet adjusted seamlessly, keeping it perfectly balanced. She ran through simulations in her head: speed, altitude, wind direction, trajectory. Every factor mattered. Every decision could mean the difference between survival and catastrophe. Her mind functioned like a high-speed chess match, predicting the opponent's responses with frightening accuracy. Suddenly, an F-16 pilot's voice cut sharply through the radio. "Unidentified craft closing on civilian airspace. We can't hold it off," requesting immediate engagement. Eyes narrowed, The situation was critical. If the enemy breached the perimeter, casualties would be inevitable. "Hold your positions," she instructed calmly. "Engage only when coordinated. I'll provide vectors for intercept. Stand by for A-10 arrival." Her instructions were precise, every word chosen to convey authority and clarity. The pilots obeyed, their fear tempered by the clarity of her commands. His mind flicked back to her Air Force days, to classified missions over hostile territory where the enemy's cunning was matched only by their speed. She remembered nights of navigation under fire, radar screens lighting up with enemy signatures, adrenaline surging through every fiber of her being. Those experiences had honed her instincts to razor-sharp precision. Now, decades later, she applied the same skills in a different cockpit, guiding lives she had never met, people unaware of the storm about to hit. The silence of the desert below contrasted sharply with the chaos unfolding above. Her co-pilot swallowed hard, glancing at the nervous crew behind them. "Do you think she can handle this?" he asked quietly. Didn't answer immediately. Her focus was on the screen, on the blips moving unpredictably but with patterns she could read. "She's already handling it," said another crew member softly, realizing only partially the depth of her skill. The plane itself seemed to respond to her presence, every adjustment smooth, measured, precise. Outside, the F-16 pilots' movements grew more coordinated, following the invisible hand guiding them. The enemy craft made a sudden dive, banking sharply toward the ground, testing the F-16's reflexes. His voice cut through the tension. "Lead left, Delta 23, maintain formation. Adjust speed to intercept Vector 305. You've got 30 seconds to align before engagement." The F-16 pilots executed flawlessly, their trust in her unwavering even as the unknown threat twisted and turned around them. His calculations accounted for every variable: fuel, wind, missile speed, enemy trajectory. Every choice was life or death, yet she made it appear effortless. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The passengers murmured nervously, unaware of the intricate aerial ballet unfolding above them. Size never left the radar, her fingers resting lightly on the controls, ready to adjust in milliseconds. Her mind ran 100 calculations at once, predicting enemy movements, calculating escape routes, preparing for backup coordination. And then in the distance, the unmistakable roar of engines cut through the sky. The A-10 had arrived. "Backup inbound," she announced calmly, almost softly, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "They're here. Prepare for coordinated engagement. Follow my guidance." The F-16 pilots relayed the message, relief audible in their tones. The A-10 engines thundered closer, a mechanical beast ready to unleash firepower, a promise that the balance of power was shifting. His calculations shifted instantly to integrate their arrival, her mind orchestrating a combined assault that would maximize effectiveness while minimizing risk. Even as the enemy craft adapted to the F-16's maneuvers, anticipated the adjustments. "Delta 17, intercept Vector 445. Lead with engagement angle 15, she instructed, precise, cold, calculating. Every movement of the cargo plane was purposeful, every decision engineered for survival. The desert below, serene and unaware, stretched endlessly, while above, a storm of strategy, skill, and raw nerve unfolded. The passengers remained oblivious, their fear mingled with fascination, as guided the skis with the calm of a master in command. The tension was palpable. The F-16 pilots, now aware of her mastery, moved with an almost instinctual trust. His voice, steady and unwavering, carried authority that no one could question. The A-10 approached, its presence a thunderous reassurance, yet the threat was not gone. His mind raced ahead, planning for contingencies, anticipating enemy behavior, ensuring that the skis would remain under her control. And in that moment, high above the Nevada desert, a silent truth was revealed. Hayes was no ordinary cargo pilot. She was a tactician, a master, a hidden ace ready to command the skis. Fingers danced across the controls with quiet precision, each adjustment deliberate yet imperceptible to anyone not trained to notice. The cargo plane shifted subtly, a graceful pivot through the thin Nevada air, while the F-16s responded to her calculated commands like extensions of her own instincts. The unidentified aircraft was clever, fast, and unpredictable, but had anticipated its movements even before it made them. Her mind, honed from years of aerial combat, worked faster than the eye could follow, calculating angles, velocities, and altitudes with mathematical certainty. Every movement of the enemy became part of a larger equation she was solving in real time. "Lead left, Delta 24. Keep formation tight," she instructed, her voice calm yet authoritative. The F-16 pilots obeyed instantly, their trust implicit even though her identity remained a mystery. They had never encountered someone who could guide them with such unerring precision. Eyes scanned the horizon, reading every subtle movement of the enemy craft as though it were an open book. She anticipated its next move, a sudden roll to evade, followed by a high-speed dive. "Prepare for Maneuver 3, she said softly, almost to herself, already aligning vectors for intercept. In the cargo bay, the hum of anxious passengers filled the cabin. Contractors whispered worriedly, unaware of the storm in the sky above. One young man leaned over a seat, eyes wide, whispering to his colleague, "Do you think she knows what she's doing?" He had no idea. Was not merely guiding the plane, she was orchestrating an aerial chess match where lives hung in the balance. The precision of her commands gave the pilots confidence, even as fear tightened in the pit of their stomachs. Outside, the enemy craft darted in a deceptive zigzag pattern, attempting to force the F-16s into a vulnerable position. Anticipated it, adjusting the cargo plane's trajectory and relaying instructions. Vector Alpha 35, altitude 520, lead craft intercept from 12 o'clock, maintain speed 20 knots above base. Her directions were delivered with the calm of a seasoned commander, each word carrying weight, each instruction a life-saving measure. The F-16s executed flawlessly, following her guidance as if she were the invisible hand of fate itself. Her mind flicked back to the past, to days when her decisions carried the same weight, though then it had been in combat zones over foreign lands. She remembered nights of tracking enemy fighters, plotting intercepts in hostile skis, feeling the pulse of danger in every fiber of her being. Back then, she had been recognized, awarded, celebrated. Now she operated in anonymity, guiding lives without recognition, her heroism known only to those who survived because of her skill. The calm demeanor that concealed decades of combat experience was her greatest weapon. Suddenly, the enemy craft executed an aggressive climb, attempting to gain altitude advantage. Eyes flicked to the radar. Anticipate climb, prepare for flank intercept. Adjust cargo plane 20 feet starboard, speed -5 knots. F-16s, angle 20 degrees port, Delta 32. Hold steady until I confirm engagement. The pilots followed her instructions with a mix of awe and disbelief. Her calculations left no margin for error. The enemy's movements, while unpredictable to most, were mapped entirely in her mind, a web of possibilities she controlled effortlessly. The A-10 approached from the horizon, its massive engines roaring like a mechanical beast, integrated its trajectory into her calculations seamlessly, guiding it toward the enemy without a moment's hesitation. A-10, Vector 448, altitude 540, lead craft, hold position until intercept confirmed. The F-16 pilots and the approaching A-10 moved in concert, guided by an unseen hand. The sky became a battlefield of precise coordination, every pilot a piece on her strategic chessboard. Even the passengers began to sense the gravity of the situation, their nervous whispers tinged with awe as the massive aircraft closed in on the threat. Minutes passed like hours. Remained stoic, her face unreadable as she monitored every blip on the radar. The cargo plane, massive and seemingly cumbersome, became a tool in her strategy, a pivot point for maneuvers that gave her team an advantage. She had transformed it from a passive transport vehicle into a command platform capable of directing life-and-death decisions. Each adjustment was a calculated move in a game only she fully understood. "Prepare for engagement," she said finally, her voice soft but firm. "Enemy craft will attempt evasive maneuvers. Lead F-16, hold pattern until A-10 is aligned. Backup, maintain intercept vector Alpha 7. Engage on my mark." The pilots followed flawlessly, their trust absolute. His mind worked ahead of the action, calculating contingency after contingency. She anticipated every roll, every dive, every missile the enemy might fire. Her calmness radiated through the cockpit, giving the crew a sense of safety even as the threat loomed ever closer. In the passenger cabin, the murmurs of fear had quieted slightly. Crew members exchanged glances, noticing serene focus. There was a strange aura about her, a sense that she was in total command of the situation, even if no one could understand how. Outside, the desert sky stretched endlessly, golden and serene, contrasting sharply with the tension above. Every pilot, every aircraft, and every decision converged in the theater had orchestrated, turning a chaotic threat into a controlled, precise engagement. The enemy craft, now fully aware of the combined F-16 and A-10 presence, attempted a desperate maneuver, a high-speed dive toward the terrain below. Eyes tracked it instantly. Adjust altitude 10 feet, speed plus 10 knots. Lead F-16, prepare Alpha 3 to intercept. Backup, angle 20 degrees port. Engage simultaneously. On my mark. Her fingers hovered over the controls, a poised conductor ready to release the first crescendo of an aerial symphony. The enemy was cornered, yet still dangerous, testing every skill had accumulated over decades. A subtle smile touched her lips, almost imperceptible. She was ready. The calm, quiet woman in the cockpit, underestimated by all, was about to unleash the strategic brilliance that would define this encounter. Outside, the desert held its breath. The F-16s held formation. The A-10 thundered closer. And Hayes, the silent ace, prepared to turn the tide of a battle that no one had seen coming. The Nevada desert below stretched like a golden canvas, untouched and indifferent to the chaos unfolding above. Hayes's fingers hovered lightly over the controls, adjusting the cargo plane's trajectory with a precision that made it appear effortless. Outside, the enemy craft twisted and banked, attempting maneuvers that would have flustered any ordinary pilot, but anticipated each one, her mind calculating angles, speeds, and timing down to fractions of a second. Every blip on the radar was a move in a game she had already visualized. This was no longer routine. This was war in miniature, orchestrated from the quiet cockpit of a cargo plane. The F-16 pilots were in position, forming a loose ring around the rogue craft. "Lead left, hold formation, Delta 3-2, instructed, her voice calm, carrying an authority that allowed no hesitation. The pilots without question, their trust in her complete despite not knowing her full history. The cargo plane moved like a silent anchor, subtly adjusting to ensure the F-16s maintained optimal positioning. Calculations considered wind speed, enemy acceleration, missile velocity, and even the position of the sun, each variable carefully integrated into a precise tactical solution. Minutes passed like heartbeats. The enemy made a sudden roll to the right, a feint designed to confuse and isolate the F-16s. Predictive maneuver, hold vector until A-10 intercept aligns. Delta 3-5, altitude 520. Execute engagement on my mark, commanded. The A-10, massive and roaring, closed in with the sound of a mechanical predator. Its presence was both intimidating and reassuring, a force multiplier that would coordinate to maximum effect. The pilots understood instinctively that this was a carefully planned operation, the kind that only a master tactician could orchestrate in real time. The first shots were fired. Tracers lit the sky like streaks of lightning, missiles arcing through thin air with deadly precision. The enemy craft attempted evasive maneuvers, but calculations anticipated each roll, each dive, each acceleration. Adjust altitude 10 feet, speed plus 5 knots. Lead craft, angle 15 degrees port. Maintain intercept vector Alpha 44, she instructed. Her calm voice contrasted with the explosions erupting around them, the thunder of engines, and the raw chaos of aerial combat. Every instruction she gave was a lifeline, every maneuver a shield for the cargo plane and its passengers. Inside the cockpit, co-pilot's eyes widened. "Captain, how are you calculating all of this?" he asked, voice barely audible over the roar of engines. Didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her mind worked faster than speech, faster than reaction. The cargo plane, seemingly cumbersome and out of place among the sleek fighter jets, became the pivot of a deadly ballet orchestrated by her alone. She had turned an ordinary transport into a command center, a fulcrum that gave the Allied pilots the upper hand. The passengers murmured anxiously, unaware of the tactical genius guiding their fate. One contractor gripped the armrest, eyes wide. "I thought this was just a cargo flight," he whispered. Another passenger, trying to mask fear, nodded, unable to take their eyes off the small windows that framed the sky alive with missile fire and dogfighting aircraft. Outside, contrails and tracer fire crisscrossed the horizon, an intricate pattern of lethal choreography. His voice remained calm and steady, guiding her team with quiet authority as though it were all perfectly ordinary. Suddenly, the enemy craft attempted a steep climb, seeking altitude advantage. Anticipated it instantly. Vector Alpha 37 adjusts speed plus 10 knots. Lead F-16 hold altitude 20 feet above. Prepare simultaneous engagement from port angle 25. Engage on my mark. The pilots executed perfectly, every movement precise, every missile fired at the exact moment needed. The first enemy craft, attempting to escape, was struck by a calculated volley from the combined firepower. Explosions lit the sky, debris scattering across the thin desert air. The roar of the A-10 dominated the horizon, its massive cannon spitting fire with terrifying accuracy. Calculations allowed it to strike with maximum effect while minimizing risk to the F-16s and cargo plane. One of the enemy blips disintegrated in midair, leaving a smoke trail against the clear blue sky. The F-16 pilots cheered over the radio, their relief palpable. "Target neutralized," one shouted, though didn't respond with celebration. There was still work to be done. The other craft remained, dangerous and unpredictable, adapting to the sudden loss of their comrade. Focus sharpened. Secondary target Delta 34 anticipate evasive maneuvers. Lead F-16 angle 20 degrees port, maintain formation. Prepare intercept vector 448. Engage simultaneously. The enemy pilot, realizing the coordinated assault, attempted a desperate series of rolls and dives, predicted each one, guiding her team with almost supernatural precision. The cargo plane twisted and pitched subtly, every adjustment timed to perfection. Crew members braced themselves, hearts pounding, sensing both danger and the quiet command radiating from the cockpit. The second strike was nearly flawless. Missile fire from both F-16s and the A-10 forced the enemy into a defensive retreat, breaking its rhythm and confidence. Hands never faltered, her eyes never leaving the radar screen. She calculated escape vectors for the rogue craft while simultaneously positioning her team for maximum advantage. The tension in the air was palpable, yet calmness imbued her pilots with the confidence to execute maneuvers that would otherwise seem impossible. As the smoke trails faded into the distance, allowed herself a small, nearly imperceptible nod. The first engagement had been won, though the battle was far from over. The cargo plane glided smoothly, almost serene, in stark contrast to the violent ballet that had unfolded around it. Passengers and crew alike exchanged astonished glances, beginning to sense that the woman in the cockpit was no ordinary pilot. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, silent and indifferent, as if witnessing the orchestration of chaos from above. Lean back slightly, exhaling softly. "First strike complete. Monitor for retaliation. Keep vectors tight, we're not done yet." Her voice, calm and unwavering, carried authority. The F-16s responded immediately, adjusting formations, while the A-10 maintained its protective cover. The enemy had been damaged, disoriented, and yet they remained a threat. Mind was already calculating the next series of maneuvers, every possible contingency accounted for, every angle of attack predicted. The calm, quiet pilot had just revealed her true mastery of the sky. Above the Nevada desert, the sun glinted off the scattered contrails of the first engagement, the roar of engines still echoing faintly. Hayes sat quietly in the cockpit, unassuming, composed, yet completely in control. The sky had become her battlefield, the cargo plane her command center, and every pilot her instrument in a symphony of strategy. The first act was complete, but the story was far from over. The battle for the skis had only just begun. The Nevada sky, once serene, now shimmered with the aftermath of the first engagement. Smoke trails from the destroyed enemy craft lingered like ghostly fingerprints against the horizon. F-16 pilots maintained formation, their eyes flicking to the cargo plane with a mixture of awe and disbelief. Whoever was guiding them had orchestrated a near-perfect engagement, yet none of them knew who it was. Hayes sat quietly at the controls, her expression calm, almost serene. But inside, her mind raced ahead, calculating the next series of maneuvers, anticipating every potential retaliation. "Who is she?" One F-16 pilot muttered over the radio, voice tinged with disbelief. "We've never seen anything like this." Lips curved into a faint smile, though she didn't respond. She didn't need to. Every instruction she issued conveyed authority and expertise far beyond the capacity of a typical cargo pilot. The remaining enemy craft, damaged but adaptive, had regrouped, circling at high speed, testing their limits while probing for weaknesses. His mind was already several steps ahead, plotting intercepts, positioning her team, and predicting evasive maneuvers with precision. The A-10 roared overhead, engines booming like a predator asserting dominance over its territory. Integrated its position seamlessly into her calculations, using its firepower to manipulate the battlefield. Delta 3-4, anticipate evasive maneuvers. Lead F-16, maintain intercept vector Alpha 7. Hold engagement angle 22, she instructed calmly. Every word was calculated, every command a life-saving measure. The pilots followed her guidance flawlessly, their trust implicit. For the first time, the mystery of her identity began to weigh on them. They weren't just following a skilled pilot, they were following a tactician, a strategist whose experience was unparalleled. Memories of past flickered through her mind. She had been an Air Force ace, commanding missions over hostile skis, navigating through radar storms, missile fire, and enemy ambushes. Her accolades were numerous, her skill undeniable, yet she had chosen anonymity, leaving public life behind for a quieter existence. Now, decades later, she had returned to the skis not for fame, not for recognition, but for duty. The lives of strangers depended on her knowledge, instincts, and composure. She was the hidden ace, operating under a quiet veil of normalcy. The remaining enemy craft attempted a coordinated attack, diving at the F-16s in a desperate maneuver. Eyes narrowed as she tracked the trajectory on her radar. Adjust altitude 20 feet, speed +7 knots. Lead F-16, hold formation until intercept is confirmed. A-10, engage simultaneously at vector 448, she commanded. The pilots executed perfectly, missiles streaking across the sky in deadly arcs. Explosions lit the horizon, scattering smoke and debris. One enemy craft spiraled out of control, forced to retreat or risk destruction. The precision of calculations was evident to all, leaving no room for error. In the cockpit, the co-pilot's jaw tightened. I can't believe what I'm seeing," he admitted, gripping the controls. Focus never wavered. "Believe it," she said softly, almost to herself. "This is what happens when experience meets instinct, when preparation meets opportunity." Her calm authority radiated outward, calming the crew and inspiring confidence in the pilots following her lead. Even the passengers, unaware of the full extent of the battle, sensed the skill guiding their journey. Fear mingled with awe, each heartbeat echoing the tension in the sky above. The F-16 pilots began piecing together her history from her commands, her precision, and her understanding of aerial tactics. "This isn't just a cargo pilot," one whispered over the radio. "She's an ace." Another pilot's voice trembled with a mix of admiration and disbelief. "We need to know who she is. How is she doing this?" Remained silent, letting her actions speak louder than words. Every maneuver, every calculated adjustment, every strategic command revealed the truth without the need for explanation. She was extraordinary. The enemy, now desperate, attempted a series of unpredictable maneuvers to escape, anticipated each roll, each climb, each dive, directing her team with uncanny accuracy. "Lead F-16, prepare Alpha 3-2 intercept. A-10, hold engagement angle 20 degrees port. Execute simultaneously on my mark," she instructed. The missiles fired, the enemy craft forced into retreat, their confidence shattered. The battle continued, yet the dynamic had shifted. Its mastery of the skies was undeniable. The enemy had no advantage left. Even as the engagement continued, allowed a brief mental check of her surroundings. The cargo plane remained stable, the passengers safe, the crew reassured by her calm presence. Outside, the A-10 and F-16s executed her commands flawlessly. Her orchestration turned what could have been a chaotic dogfight into a controlled, precise engagement. Every calculation, every decision, every command reflected decades of training, experience, and instinct refined to near perfection. The hidden ace had revealed herself through action, not words, yet her identity now shimmered like a truth too obvious to ignore. As the enemy craft faltered, struggling to maintain formation under relentless assault, his mind raced ahead to the next phase. Secondary intercept vectors confirmed. Maintain altitude, hold position, and await engagement confirmation. All pilots prepare for simultaneous strike. "On my mark," she ordered. The F-16 pilots responded instantly, their trust absolute. The A-10 positioned for a coordinated strike, its massive engines roaring approval. Her calmness, her precision, her command had transformed a desperate situation into one under control. The sky, once threatening, had become her battlefield, her orchestration flawless. And then, finally, the realization dawned on the pilots. The quiet cargo pilot guiding them, orchestrating life-and-death decisions with unmatched precision, was no ordinary civilian. Hayes, the legendary ace they had only heard whispers of in classified circles, was alive, commanding the sky once more. The battlefield above Nevada was far from over, yet a silent truth had emerged. Sometimes, heroes reveal themselves not with fanfare but with the quiet certainty of skill and composure. His identity had been revealed, not through accolades, not through recognition, but through action. And the enemy, now on the defensive, had no choice but to face her mastery head-on. The enemy, battered but not defeated, circled like desperate predators, seeking any weakness to exploit. Hayes's eyes flicked across the radar, tracking every movement with near-perfect precision. Her fingers adjusted the throttle and yoke subtly, guiding the cargo plane through turbulent currents, each maneuver calculated to the millisecond. The F-16s held formation, their trust in her absolute. The A-10 thundered above, its massive engines screaming a mechanical roar of dominance. His calm voice cut through the radio static. "Maintain formation. Adjust vectors 20 degrees port. Anticipate evasive maneuvers. Lead F-16 Alpha 3-2 intercept. Engage on my mark." The enemy made its first aggressive move, diving steeply toward the F-16s in a desperate attempt to break their formation. The pilots reacted instantly, but even their advanced training could not match the precision of guidance. Delta 3-4, adjust speed plus 10 knots. Maintain altitude 20 feet above cargo plane. A-10, angle 22 degrees port. Execute intercept simultaneously, she instructed. The planes followed her instructions perfectly, missiles streaking across the sky in tight arcs. One enemy craft spiraled out of control, forced to retreat, leaving a trail of smoke behind it. A sudden missile warning flared on the cargo plane's display. Hands were steady as she calculated an evasive maneuver, accounting for the plane's weight, wind currents, and enemy trajectory. Evasive maneuver, starboard 20 feet, speed plus 5 knots, she commanded. The co-pilot's heart pounded in his chest as the plane tilted smoothly, narrowly avoiding the missile. Passengers gripped their seats, unaware that they had just escaped certain catastrophe. Remained calm, her eyes scanning the radar, already calculating the enemy's next move. The F-16s attempted a coordinated attack, but one enemy craft broke formation, aiming directly for a populated area in the valley below. Reacted instantly. Lead F-16, intercept vector 445. Prepare simultaneous engagement. Delta 2-3, maintain coverage. Civilian zones must remain clear. Execute now. Her voice carried authority, leaving no room for error. The pilots executed flawlessly. Missiles fired, the enemy craft was forced to veer away, and disaster was averted. The tension was palpable, yet its composure radiated confidence. Minutes felt like hours as the enemy regrouped, their desperation growing. They attempted a split maneuver, hopping to flank the F-16s and catch the cargo plane in a vulnerable position. Anticipated it. Adjust altitude 10 feet, speed plus 7 knots. Lead F-16, hold formation. A-10, vector Alpha 7, prepare intercept. Engage simultaneously. Her instructions were precise, every move calculated to maximize offensive potential while minimizing risk. The pilots trusted her implicitly, their confidence bolstered by her flawless execution in previous engagements. In the cockpit, the co-pilot's knuckles were white as he gripped the controls. "Captain, how are you doing this? We've never seen tactics like this in the field," he admitted. Focus never wavered. "Experience, observation, anticipation," she said softly, almost to herself. "Every move they make can be predicted if you know how to read them." Outside, the A-10 and F-16s executed her commands with machine-like precision, turning a chaotic threat into a controlled, deadly ballet. Every maneuver brought the enemy closer to defeat, yet the tension never subsided. The cargo plane shuddered slightly as turbulence hit unexpectedly, a reminder that the sky itself could be as dangerous as the enemy. Adjusted the yoke seamlessly, keeping the plane stable while maintaining optimal position for her team. Maintain formation, adjust speed for wind currents. Lead F-16 Delta 3-2 intercept. A-10, angle 20 degrees port. Engage on my mark, she instructed. The pilots followed, their trust in her complete. Every move was calculated. Every decision carried life-or-death consequences. Suddenly, the enemy attempted a daring flanking maneuver, aiming directly at the cargo plane. The co-pilot's voice trembled. "Missile inbound, starboard 20 feet. Hands reacted instantly. She tilted the plane sharply, evading the missile with millimeter precision. Passengers gasped, clutching seats, unaware that the strike had been avoided by a fraction of a second. Mind was already running through contingencies, escape vectors, defensive positioning, intercept angles. The enemy had underestimated her, and they were paying the price. The F-16 pilots were visibly shaken but inspired. "She's incredible," one radioed. "I've never seen anyone handle multiple threats like this." Its identity had already begun to solidify in their minds as the legendary ace she truly was. The A-10 roared above, its presence a heavy shield against any further attacks, coordinated the three-dimensional battlefield with ease, transforming a dire situation into a controlled engagement. The enemy craft, sensing their advantage slipping, made a final desperate maneuver, a steep dive combined with a sudden roll aimed at splitting the Allied formation. Anticipated it immediately. Lead, adjust altitude 20 feet. A-10, vector Alpha 35. Execute intercept simultaneously. Civilian areas remain clear. Engagement now. The pilots obeyed without hesitation. The missiles streaked across the sky. One enemy craft disintegrated midair, and the others were forced into retreat. The coordinated precision of maneuvers had turned desperation into disaster for the attackers. As the smoke trails drifted across the Nevada sky, exhaled softly, maintaining composure. The cargo plane remained stable, the crew reassured by her quiet mastery, and the passengers unaware of the near catastrophe they had narrowly avoided. The F-16 and A-10 pilots exchanged awed glances over the radio, finally understanding the depth of her skill. She was no ordinary pilot. She was the hidden ace, the orchestrator of the skis, a master tactician whose calm and precision had saved countless lives. His mind, however, remained focused on the next threat. The enemy was still out there, adaptive and dangerous. But for now she had earned a momentary advantage. The cargo plane glided smoothly through the thin desert air, a silent command center, a beacon of calm amidst chaos. Hayes, quiet and unassuming, had just demonstrated why she was feared and respected in equal measure. The sky had tested her, and she had answered flawlessly. The sky above Nevada had transformed into a theater of war. Tracer fire streaked like molten ribbons, and the contrails of aircraft carved intricate patterns across the blue expanse. Hayes remained calm, her fingers light on the controls, her eyes scanning the radar for even the slightest blip that could indicate danger. Every move, every adjustment, every instruction was deliberate. The enemy had regrouped after their earlier defeats, their desperation growing with each failed attempt to outmaneuver the F-16s and A-10. Knew they would throw everything at them in one final, reckless strike. Lead F-16 Delta 3-4. Maintain formation. Adjust vectors 20 degrees starboard. Anticipate evasive maneuvers, instructed, her voice steady, unflinching. The pilots executed flawlessly, trusting her completely despite the chaos surrounding them. The A-10 thundered above, engines screaming in tandem with the F-16's supersonic streaks, forming a coordinated assault under expert guidance. Each craft moved as if connected by invisible threads, perfectly aligned to counter the enemy's desperate tactics. The cargo plane, seemingly out of place in the high-stakes dogfight, became the fulcrum around which the engagement pivoted. The enemy launched a coordinated attack, splitting into two groups to flank the Allied formation, anticipated it instantly. Adjust altitude 15 feet, Delta 2-3 maintain cover, lead F-16 intercept vector Alpha 7, hold engagement angle 22, execute strike simultaneously. Her instructions were precise, delivered with the quiet authority of a seasoned commander. The pilots responded without hesitation, missiles streaking through the sky with deadly accuracy. The first group of enemy craft was neutralized, spiraling in smoke and fire, leaving only the second wave to contend with. Inside the cockpit, the co-pilot's hands trembled slightly. "Captain, they're throwing everything at us," he said, voice tight. Eyes remained on the radar. "Good, that means they're predictable. We just need precision, timing, and coordination. Follow my lead." Her calmness was infectious, the crew's fear transformed into focused determination. Outside, the remaining enemy craft twisted and turned, attempting evasive maneuvers, but calculations were flawless. Every movement had already been accounted for, every escape vector neutralized before it could be attempted. The passengers murmured nervously in the cabin. None of them could comprehend the full scope of the battle outside. All they saw were flashes of light, felt the subtle shifts of the cargo plane as it weaved through turbulence, and heard the distant roar of fighter jets. Remained stoic, her focus absolute. She had guided countless lives through peril before, but never in a situation quite like this. A delicate balance of civilian passengers, Allied pilots, and enemy aggression. One wrong move could be catastrophic. The remaining enemy craft made a bold attempt to dive on the cargo plane, hopping to catch it in a vulnerable position. His eyes narrowed. Evasive maneuver, starboard 20 feet, speed plus 7 knots. Lead, prepare intercept vector Alpha 448. A-10, angle 25 degrees port. Engage now. The maneuver was executed flawlessly. The missile fired by the enemy narrowly missed the cargo plane, disintegrating against the Nevada sky. Passengers gasped, some gripping their seats in terror, unaware that they had just avoided certain death by a fraction of a second. The F-16s closed in on the second wave, striking with coordinated precision under guidance. Missiles streaked across the sky, hitting the remaining enemy craft. Explosions erupted, smoke trailing across the horizon as the final wave faltered. The A-10 roared overhead, providing cover and heavy firepower, ensuring that the enemy had no chance to recover. Calculations had created a perfect convergence. No friendly aircraft were endangered, civilian zones remained untouched, and the enemy was cornered with no room to maneuver. Minutes stretched into tense hours as the enemy attempted one last desperate maneuver, a high-speed dive combined with erratic rolls, anticipated every move. Adjust altitude 10 feet, Delta 32 hold formation, lead F-16 Alpha 35 intercept, A-10 execute simultaneous engagement. The final strike was precise. The last enemy craft exploded midair, debris scattering across the thin desert air. Silence settled briefly over the battlefield, punctuated only by the roar of engines and the echo of distant explosions fading into the horizon. The F-16 pilots' voices crackled over the radio, a mixture of relief and astonishment. "Target neutralized. Incredible coordination," one shouted. Another added, "Whoever that cargo pilot is, she's a legend." His lips curved into the smallest of smiles, though her focus never wavered. She ensured the cargo plane remained stable, checking systems and monitoring for any unexpected hazards. Every calculation had been executed, every threat neutralized, yet her mind already considered contingencies for landing and civilian safety. In the cockpit, the co-pilot finally allowed himself to breathe. "Captain, you saved everyone. We owe you our lives." Gaze softened for a brief moment, acknowledging the weight of their words without leaving her composure. "We all did our part. Precision, timing, and coordination. Never underestimate them," she said quietly. The cargo plane, once a silent observer in the battle, now carried the calm authority of a pilot who had faced chaos and emerged victorious. Outside, the Nevada sky returned to its serene, indifferent state. Smoke trails faded into the distance, leaving only the memory of fire and action. The F-16s and A-10s gradually broke formation, returning to base after a flawless execution of commands. The cargo plane, its passengers safe and unaware of the near-apocalyptic danger they had survived, glided steadily toward its destination. Hayes, the hidden ace, had revealed her true skill in the face of overwhelming odds, and had saved countless lives through calm precision, tactical genius, and unshakable composure. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the desert, allowed herself a moment of reflection. The battle was over, but the impact of her actions would ripple far beyond the skies above Nevada. She had commanded without recognition, orchestrated without fanfare, and ensured that chaos yielded to order. In the quiet of the cockpit, she remained unassuming, the hero of a story that few would fully comprehend, yet one that would never be forgotten by those whose lives she had saved. The cargo plane descended steadily over the Nevada desert, the golden sunlight casting long shadows across the rugged landscape below. The tension that had gripped the cabin for hours began to ease, though passengers remained wide-eyed and tense, still processing the glimpses of danger they had unknowingly skirted. Hayes's hands rested lightly on the yoke, every adjustment precise, every movement controlled. The F-16s and the A-10 had already returned to base, their pilots still reeling from the extraordinary guidance they had received. Few would ever know the full extent of her command, the subtle orchestration that had turned a potential catastrophe into a flawless victory. The co-pilot glanced at her, a mixture of awe and gratitude etched across his face. "Captain, how do you remain so calm through all of that? I've never seen anything like it," he said quietly, as though speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile calm that now surrounded them. Didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were focused on the landing approach, scanning instruments, monitoring speed, wind, and altitude. "Focus on execution," she said finally, her voice soft yet authoritative. "Calm ensures precision. Panic ensures disaster. That is the difference between survival and catastrophe." Passengers whispered amongst themselves, their curiosity piqued by the subtle tension still lingering in the cabin. A young woman clutched the armrest, glancing nervously out the window. "Did we almost crash?" she asked, voice trembling. Another passenger shook his head. "I don't think we know what actually happened. Something dangerous, though. That's all I know." Remained silent, knowing that some truths were best left unspoken until the proper time. She had guided them through fire and smoke, through missiles and evasive maneuvers, and now her priority was ensuring their safe arrival on solid ground. Below, the airstrip came into view, a thin ribbon of asphalt cutting through the desert. Adjusted the plane's descent rate, calculating every variable: wind shear, airspeed, weight, even the subtle turbulence from the shifting desert thermals. The cargo plane responded to her adjustments with a grace that belied its size. "Landing gear deployed," she announced calmly. "Flaps 40 degrees. Maintain approach vector 320. Speed 20 knots above base. Co-pilot, monitor instruments. Execute manual override if necessary." Every word was deliberate, a reflection of decades of experience in high-stakes aerial operations. The co-pilot nodded, following her instructions precisely. The cargo plane touched down smoothly, tires kissing the tarmac with minimal jolt. The engines roared and hissed as reverse thrusters engaged, slowing the plane with precision. Passengers exhaled collectively, some gripping their seats in relief, others staring in astonishment at the unshakable calm of the crew. Eyes flicked to the runway, ensuring a straight, stable rollout. Minutes later, the plane taxied to a halt, engines throttled back, systems powered down. The immediate danger had passed. Silence fell for a moment, broken only by the murmurs of passengers and the distant hum of support vehicles. Exhaled softly, allowing herself a brief moment to relax, though her mind remained sharp, already reviewing the sequence of events, analyzing every maneuver, every decision. The F-16 and A-10 pilots had already sent congratulatory messages over secure channels, praising the unseen commander whose precision had turned chaos into controlled victory. Only a few would ever know the identity of the quiet cargo pilot who had orchestrated an aerial battle with skill unmatched by any living soul. As the cabin doors opened, the crew assisted passengers down the stairs, their expressions a mix of awe and curiosity. Questions buzzed in the air. Who had guided them? How had they survived? And why had they remained so calm? Stayed back, quietly monitoring the final procedures, allowing her co-pilot and cabin crew to handle the post-landing coordination. Her presence was understated, yet her command had been absolute. Every life had been preserved, every maneuver executed flawlessly, and every threat neutralized without unnecessary risk. Outside, the desert air was crisp and dry. The golden light of late afternoon bathed the scene in warmth, a sharp contrast to the chaos that had dominated the skies mere moments ago. Support teams approached the aircraft, inspecting for damage, assisting the crew, and ensuring the plane was secure. Calm demeanor remained unchanged, though a subtle sense of satisfaction touched her expression. She had guided the cargo plane and its passengers through a crisis that had few precedents, and she had done so with precision, composure, and quiet authority. The F-16 and A-10 pilots arrived soon after, their faces a mixture of relief, respect, and awe. One approached as she disembarked, extending a hand. "We've heard stories, but seeing it in action, you're beyond incredible," he said, voice shaking slightly. Shook his hand, her expression modest. "It's about execution, timing, and trust. You all did your part. We all did our part," she replied. The pilots nodded, understanding that the calm figure of the cargo pilot had been the anchor around which their coordinated efforts had succeeded. Passengers gathered their belongings, whispering excitedly, still trying to grasp the events they had experienced. Some glanced at with gratitude, others with curiosity. None could fully comprehend the quiet, unassuming woman who had just guided them through what could have been a catastrophic aerial engagement. Offered polite nods, allowing them their moment of wonder, yet she remained detached from praise. Her focus had always been on results, on precision, on ensuring lives were preserved. Recognition was never her goal, survival and control were. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert runway, Hayes walked slowly toward the waiting vehicle that would take her away from the scene. She paused for a moment, glancing back at the cargo plane, the F-16s, and the A-10. The battle was over, but the impact of her actions would echo far beyond the desert. She had saved countless lives, demonstrated unmatched skill, and revealed the quiet brilliance of a hidden ace. Yet true to form, she would walk away quietly, leaving only the memory of mastery, calm, and courage. The Nevada desert returned to its silent, indifferent state, the echoes of engines and explosions fading into memory. Hayes, unassuming yet extraordinary, had navigated chaos, orchestrated victory, and ensured that order prevailed. Her story would live in the memories of those who witnessed it, a testament to the power of precision, calm, and expertise under pressure. The hero of the skis had acted quietly, decisively, and without need for recognition, and the world would be safer because of it.